My family cut off my cousin from all gatherings after she got pregnant at 18. When she tried to warn them about my uncle-in-law, my mother told her to stop projecting her bad decisions onto good men. That was 8 months ago. Yesterday, she found photos in her husband's drawer, and now she won't stop calling my cousin to apologize. I was 17 when my cousin Leela showed up to Thanksgiving after 2 years of silence. The dining room went dead quiet. You could hear Grandpa's oxygen machine hissing in the background. "Well, if it isn't the girl who threw away Princeton and got herself knocked up at 18, Aunt Sylvia muttered, just loud enough to echo. I tried to go help with Leela's diaper bag, but my mom's hand clamped down on my shoulder. "She made her choice, Nora. Don't normalize teen pregnancy." Over the next few months, I watched Leela drift through family events like she wasn't really there. She took 2 buses to get there. No one would offer her a ride. The family's former Golden Girl, valedictorian, and debate team captain now ate Easter dinner alone on the couch, gently bouncing her son while everyone else sat at the big table talking about GRE scores. Uncle Rick once said they had offered to take care of the problem when she first got pregnant. The way he said it made my stomach twist. Leela didn't flinch. She just kept spooning homemade sweet potato puree into her baby's mouth. She'd made it herself because of his allergies. Nobody remembered that part. When Cousin Derek forgot his insulin at the Lunar New Year dinner, Leela was the only one who noticed his trembling hands. Everything changed at the Christmas party. I escaped to the garage to grab ice, trying to dodge drunk relatives asking about college applications. I put in my earbuds and hit my mint vape, hoping the buzz would carry me back inside. I had just pulled one earbud out when I saw Victor behind me. Tattoos, broad shoulders, 6'3". He was Nina's husband, the one whose jokes always had something off about them. "Looking real grown up, Nora." His breath reeked of vodka. He backed me up against the freezer, hand sliding toward my thigh. "I've been watching you grow up, worth the wait." "Victor, kitchen, now." Leela's voice cut through the air like a blade. She stood in the doorway like a shield. It was the first time I saw Victor look afraid, truly afraid. He mumbled something about checking on Nina and shuffled away. Leela stayed with me, doing slow breathing exercises until my hands stopped trembling. "You okay?" was all she asked. No lectures, no blame, just a calm presence holding me steady. I pulled her into the living room to tell my parents. I was still shaking, but I trusted them. Leela told them what happened. "Victor isn't a good man." "She's just bitter," Nina snapped from behind us. We hadn't even realized she was there. Everyone immediately took her side. Nina was a detective, solved cold cases. Her word was gospel in our family. "Of course Nina would know if her own husband were dangerous," Mom said. "Leela, stop projecting your poor choices onto decent men." Dad added, "Maybe if you weren't so easy, you wouldn't be so quick to see danger in everyone." They made Leela apologize to Victor for defaming his character. The whole time, he stood there smirking, his eyes glued to my chest, winking when no one was looking. I wanted to talk to Leela, but she vanished after that. So I holed up at my best friend's house, trying to make sense of it all. At 3 a.m., our family group chat exploded. Someone posted screenshots of Leela on escort websites, her face front and center. "This is who's around our children," Uncle Rick wrote. The pictures were clearly fake. The tattoo on her shoulder was mirrored, like someone flipped the photo. But no one cared. They voted to cut her off completely. My mom said she was contacting CPS about her lifestyle. Aunt Sylvia raised a glass at brunch the next day. Well, I had Leela's Snap Map location. The next morning, I drove to her apartment with a jar of homemade sweet potato puree, not knowing what I'd find. The door was cracked open. I stepped inside. She was packing garbage bags full of clothes. Her son was at daycare. "They're going to take him," she kept repeating. "I've worked so hard, and they're going to take my baby." I held her while she shook. "You're the only one who's ever been kind to us," she whispered into my shoulder.
"The father, is he paying child support?" I asked. I knew it was a dumb question, but I didn't know what else to say. Leela pulled away, her eyes hollowed out with pain. "Victor is his father." My stomach dropped. The room spun. I clutched the edge of Leela's kitchen counter, trying to wrap my head around what she'd just said. Victor? Nina's husband? The man who'd pinned me against the freezer a few nights ago? Leela's hands shook as she zipped another trash bag. She moved like someone who'd trained herself to function through catastrophe, folding her son's tiny shirts with robotic precision. She packed a dinosaur onesie. I remembered that one. Her son had worn it to Easter dinner while everyone ignored the two of them. My phone buzzed. Mom, asking where I was. I didn't answer. Instead, I helped Leela haul bags out to her beat-up Honda. The parking lot was nearly deserted, just a few cars with expired stickers and busted taillights. Leela loaded the trunk like a puzzle, arranging her life piece by piece. While we worked, she handed me her phone. Screenshots of messages from Victor going back months, threats dressed up like concern. Nina's working late tonight. Maybe your mom looks tired, so I should go check on her. Each one more sinister than the last. The most recent one from yesterday. Accidents happen, especially to single moms who don't know their place. We drove in silence to her mother's house. She lived 40 minutes away, in a neighborhood where bars on the windows weren't for decoration. Her mom opened the door in her scrubs. One look at Leela's face, and she pulled us both inside. No questions. Leela spoke quickly, everything spilling out in Korean. I sat on the plastic-covered couch trying to piece the timeline together. Leela had been 15 at Elena's quinceañera, the party everyone still remembered for the mariachi band that played until 2 a.m. I remembered seeing photos online. Leela in a stiff purple dress, standing uneasily next to Nina and Victor. 3 years before she got pregnant. 3 years before Harvard faded into a what could have been. Her mom brought us tea while Leela showed her the messages. I watched her mom's face shift, confusion, then realization, then a fury so cold it changed the temperature in the room. She picked up her phone and started dialing. Words like lawyer, women's shelter, babysitter drifted through the air in Korean. The plan was already forming. My phone rang. Dad. I picked up. He demanded to know where I was. Mom had seen my car on Leela's Snap story. They were concerned about my decision-making. I said I'd be home later, hung up before he could keep talking. Leela pulled a folder from one of the trash bags. Inside, printed emails, text blogs, photos, evidence she'd been collecting for 2 years. Victor had been careful, but not careful enough. There were messages when she was 16, then 17, always towing the line, always when Nina was out of town or asleep. Then the doorbell rang. We froze. Leela's mom peeked through the peephole, then exhaled. It was Samira, Leela's best friend from high school. She'd been at Elena's party, too. She wrapped Leela in a hug, then turned to me, eyes full of stories she didn't have to tell. Samira had brought her laptop. She'd saved everything from that night. Instagram stories, Snapchat memories, tagged photos. We sat at the kitchen table, scrolling chronologically. There was Leela at 10 p.m., laughing with cousins. At 11:30, she was caught in the background of someone's selfie, walking toward the elevator. Victor right behind her. Then 1 a.m., Leela was gone. Victor back at the bar beside Nina. I did math I didn't want to do. Her son was born in January. 9 months back, April. 1 week after Elena's quinceañera. Samira pulled up more pictures. Nina passed out at a table, surrounded by shot glasses, the drunkest anyone had ever seen her. Now it all clicked. The setup, the alibi. Let your husband roam while you're blacked out. Leela's mom was still on the phone. A friend from church could help her open a new account. Another knew someone who rented apartments without background checks. The Korean community phone tree was kicking into gear, building a safety net the rest of our family had deliberately torn apart. I helped Leela create a new email, new social media profiles. We changed every password, enabled two-factor authentication on everything. Samira said she knew someone who could check Leela's phone for tracking apps.
Every step we took felt like gearing up for battle. The fake escort photos were still making rounds in the family group chat. Uncle Rick had forwarded them to relatives we hadn't spoken to in years, adding commentary about keeping the children safe. Aunt Sylvia made a self-congratulatory post about always having a feeling. Not one person asked why the photos surfaced right after Leela tried to protect me. Then her son's daycare called. They'd received an anonymous report claiming she was an unfit mother. The photos had been sent to them, too. Leela's voice quivered as she explained the situation over the phone. The daycare director, who'd known her for 2 years, promised to document the harassment, but had to follow protocol and alert Child Protective Services. I thought about Nina's network, her reputation from solving cold cases, accolades from the mayor, friends across the police department, child services, family court. The very system meant to protect was now being used as a weapon. Stephanie had gone through even more of her photo archives, birthdays, graduations, New Year's, 4th of July, and there it was again, Victor, always hovering near younger cousins, Nina either too drunk to notice or nowhere in sight. The adults dismissing it all as his European way of greeting, kisses on both cheeks, even when the girls looked visibly uncomfortable. Leela's mom returned from the bedroom holding a box. Inside, old report cards, college acceptance letters, journals, her past life preserved. She'd kept everything waiting for her daughter to come home. Now she understood why Leela had stayed away. I texted my parents to say I was safe but wouldn't be home for dinner. The responses came immediately, furious. Dad threatened to take my car. Mom said she was calling Leela's landlord about her illegal behavior. They'd chosen their side without even asking for the truth. Leela showed me another message from Victor, sent an hour earlier. Your mom's house has such an old electrical system. Would be a shame if something sparked. We called 911. The operator logged it, but said unless the threat was more specific, there wasn't much they could do. No clear and present danger, no action. Leela let out a cold, bitter laugh. The system works exactly how it's meant to. Stephanie's boyfriend showed up with a security camera he'd bought on the way over. We mounted it above the front door, linked it to cloud storage. Small protections against a very real danger. Leela's mom called her brother and asked him to stay for a few days. He lived 2 hours away but didn't hesitate, said he was already packing. I kept thinking about that Christmas dinner. Victor knew exactly where I was. He waited until I was alone. How many other girls had been followed into garages, bedrooms, hallways? How many had tried to tell someone, only to be drowned out by Nina's badge and the family's silence? Then Leela's phone rang. Her landlord. Someone had called in another anonymous tip accusing her of running illegal activities out of her apartment. He was beginning eviction proceedings. She had 30 days. Everything was accelerating. While Leela's mom cooked dinner, kimchi stew filling the house with the scent of something normal, I sat with Leela drafting emails to legal aid groups. A new timeline now. 30 days to find safety. Her son would be out of daycare soon, another clock ticking. Stephanie kept digging. She found 3 other girls who had once been part of our extended social circle. Each of them gone now. One had moved states. One transferred schools her senior year. One disappeared from family gatherings completely. All during Victor's years of hovering. All when Nina was climbing the ranks, putting in long hours, partying hard. Leela's mom closed the laptop. Not yet. Leela's uncle arrived just as we were finishing dinner. Ex-military, now a private contractor. He didn't waste time, immediately started inspecting doors, windows, camera angles, brought tools, installed deadbolts, set up motion sensor lights, turning the house into a fortress. Meanwhile, my phone lit up, over 60 missed calls. The family group chat had moved on to organizing an intervention for me. Apparently, I'd been corrupted by bad influences. Grandma had been told I was acting out. The story was already being rewritten. Leela showed me her son's birth certificate. Father unknown. A decision that had cost her everything, but shielded her son from legal claims. Now Victor was trying to twist even that. He had a friend, one who'd been at Elena's quinceañera, the guy with the camera, the one who gave Victor his alibi. Now he was threatening to claim paternity. It hit me then. I couldn't stay here forever. I'd have to go home, face the storm.
But not yet. Not until Leela was somewhere safe. Not until we'd done everything we could to protect her and her son from the man our family kept defending. Stephanie pulled up one last photo from Elena's quinceañera, a group shot taken just before midnight. Leela wasn't in the picture, but in the background, almost too faint to notice, was a hotel door just closing. Room 237, Victor's room. The timestamp? 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes after Leela had stepped into the elevator with him right behind her.
Everything after that had just been damage control. I sat in my car outside the school pickup line the next day, watching Victor's truck pull up behind my mom's SUV. My stomach dropped. He got out, full of smiles and concerned hand gestures, and walked up to her window. I watched him lean down, speaking earnestly while she nodded, eyes soft with concern. His hand rested on her car door, casual but territorial. Then his gaze swept the lot and landed on me. His smile didn't move an inch. After he left, my mom waved me over. She told me how worried Victor was about my mental health. He recommended a therapist, she said, Dr. Robart. He's helped other teens in the family. The name hit me like ice. Nina had mentioned him at Thanksgiving. The same therapist who had worked with her nephew, who'd suddenly stopped showing up to family events last year. The next day, during Chem Lab, Miss Kim noticed me zoning out. I muttered something vague about family stress. She didn't press, just scribbled her number on a sticky note and handed it to me. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone outside the mess, she said quietly. I pocketed it. Maybe she'd noticed the circles under my eyes. Maybe she'd noticed the way I couldn't stop checking my phone for updates from Leela. That afternoon, the eviction notice arrived at Leela's apartment. I was there, taping up boxes, when the landlord slid the envelope under the door. 30 days to leave, citing multiple complaints of illegal behavior. Leela picked it up with trembling hands. Attached was a copy of the anonymous complaint. The handwriting, it was identical to the grocery lists Victor used to write for our summer barbecues. That night, Stephanie's mom called. She'd been stewing over something. At Elena's quinceañera, she'd seen Leela in the hallway of the hotel near midnight. Leela had looked shaken, disheveled, and crying, and had been heading toward Victor's room. She remembered because she found it odd. Why would Leela go to him instead of seeking out Nina or another adult woman? But then Nina had appeared, stumbling and laughing, and dragged Leela away before Stephanie's mom could step in. Word spread. My boyfriend's parents suddenly barred him from seeing me. His mother called mine to say Nina had stopped by, talking about my unstable home situation, about how I was being influenced by dangerous people. She said she didn't want her son's college applications tainted. My mom tried to defend me on the call, but I could see it. The seed of doubt had taken root. Leela started keeping a handwritten journal, recording everything. When Victor made a comment over Sunday dinner about how cloud storage isn't as secure as people think, the way he looked at her made it clear the warning was for her. She handed it to me later that night, and I hid it at Kathy's house. We went to the downtown women's shelter, hoping they could help. We explained the grooming, the threats, the custody danger. The intake counselor was kind, but she explained gently that without a police report or restraining order, there wasn't much they could do. Leela's situation didn't fit the system's narrow definition of risk. No bruises, no breaking and entering, just years of eroded autonomy, whispered threats, and silence. I started obsessing, scrolling through old Instagram tags, group photos, videos. The pattern grew clearer by the hour. Every birthday, every holiday, Victor always in the periphery of teenage girls. A hand on a shoulder here, standing just a little too close there. And Nina? Always drunk or gone. Then Elena's mom reached out. Stephanie had told her we were asking about the party. She said she'd always wondered why Leela had left so suddenly that night. Leela had helped with decorations. She'd been excited. Then she was gone. Elena's mom said she later found Leela's bracelet, the silver one Grandma had given her, on the carpet, outside the hotel room hallway.
Near Victor's hotel room. Elena's mom said she'd meant to return the bracelet the next morning, but forgot in the post-party chaos. Then the family group chat blew up again, this time with Nina sharing her concerns about my behavior. She'd made a list. Frequenting unsafe neighborhoods, associating with unstable people, showing signs of defiance. Grandma demanded an immediate family meeting. Messages flooded in. each relative chiming in with their own commentary. Uncle Rick said I seemed withdrawn at his birthday dinner. Aunt Sylvia said I'd gotten too defensive anytime Leela's name came up. I found Leela at the 24-hour laundromat by the highway around midnight. It was the only place she felt safe meeting now, public enough to avoid a scene, quiet enough to talk. She'd been sleeping in her car for 3 nights, too afraid to stay anywhere Victor might know to look. Her son was with her mom, but she wouldn't risk leading Victor there. She pulled out her son's birth certificate again, pointing to the blank space under father. Listing it as unknown had been her one line of defense, a choice to shield her son from custody claims. Now, Victor was twisting it against her. His friend, the one from Elena's quinceañera who'd taken all those conveniently placed photos, was suddenly threatening to claim paternity. The same friend who'd always been nearby to give Victor an alibi. At the grocery store later that week, Aunt Sylvia cornered me near the frozen foods. She brought up, casually, how strange it was that Victor had always offered to drive Leela to family events when she was younger. She played it off like it was just a passing thought, but I saw something shift in her face. Recognition finally catching up. Too late. I began building a timeline. Every family photo I could find, I logged into my laptop. The pattern revealed itself in seconds. Victor at Leela's middle school graduation, his arm around her waist. Victor at her Kwanzaa celebration, dancing too close. Victor at every family event, finding excuses to hover near her. And in every picture, Leela's discomfort was palpable. Crossed arms, leaned back posture, tense smiles that didn't touch her eyes. Stephanie called with more memories from high school. She'd been thinking hard about when things changed for Leela, how she was so excited for Elena's party, counting down the days. Then afterward, she went quiet, stopped wearing the clothes she loved, started covering up even in July, quit the dance team even though she was captain. All the signs they didn't want to see. At dinner, Dad mentioned Victor had offered to sponsor my college applications through his company. A generous offer, especially since Leela had wasted her chances. I watched my mom as he spoke. Something flickered across her expression. Not quite doubt, but maybe the beginning of questions she didn't want to ask out loud. Stephanie remembered something else. The night of the quinceañera, she'd found Leela crying in the hotel bathroom. She wouldn't say what was wrong. She just kept scrubbing her hands over and over. Then Nina had barged in, drunk, laughing, and dragged Leela away before Stephanie could intervene. Called her dramatic, told her to lighten up. Stephanie believed her. Why wouldn't she? Nina was the adult, the authority. Uncle Rick pulled me aside after a Sunday dinner. Wanted to know why I was stirring up drama. He reminded me of all the things Victor had done for the family. Helped people get jobs, paid off loans, always stepped in when someone needed something. The message was clear. If I kept digging, that support might vanish. And I wondered how many others were thinking the same thing, choosing silence to keep the peace. Leela kept journaling, methodically recording everything. Threats, messages, conversations. She even wrote about the night of Elena's party. Her handwriting trembled so much I could barely make out the words. When I finally read it, I had to run outside and throw up. She'd written it like a deposition, not like she was reliving trauma, and that somehow made it worse. In chemistry class, Miss Kin asked me to stay after. She'd noticed I'd been drifting. I tested her reaction with a hypothetical, a friend in trouble. She listened without judgment, then told me something I haven't forgotten. She said, "Sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who hurt us most." Then she told me her office door would always be open, both literally and otherwise.
I was picking up supplies for Leela when I overheard Victor talking to a store clerk. She'd mentioned, offhand, that his wife looked exhausted lately. probably just trying to make polite conversation. His mask slipped, just for a moment. A flicker of real anger beneath the smile before it snapped back into place. He thanked her coldly and walked off. That's when I realized how much energy Victor spent maintaining his image. Leela got another message from him soon after. It was about his friend, again, the one threatening to claim paternity. She could make this all go away, Victor said. Just stay quiet, move away, cut off contact with the family. In exchange, his friend wouldn't pursue custody. The threat was unmistakable. Obey or lose your child. Leela refused. She knew it would never stop with one demand. Mom started asking questions, tentative ones. Why was Nina so invested in Leela's situation? Why was she calling my friend's parents behind our backs? I saw her thoughts unraveling, remembering how Leela had once been sweet, reliable, brilliant, before everything changed. How the timeline never really added up if you looked at it with clear eyes. Stephanie and I spent an entire night dissecting that timeline.
Leela had been 15 at Adelena's quinceañera. The party was in April. Her son was born the following January. The math didn't lie. But beyond the math, the pattern was even more chilling.
Victor had started mingling Leela when she was 13. It began with offhand comments, how pretty she was getting. Then came the special attention, helping her with school projects, volunteering to drive her places, hovering at every family gathering. Stephanie found old photos from company picnics. Victor's co-workers always kept a subtle distance from him in group shots. Their wives made sure their daughters stayed away. Polite on the surface, but clear in their body language. They sensed something was wrong. Maybe not the details, but enough to be wary. While packing, Lila found one of her old diaries. There was an entry written shortly before she got pregnant. Reading it made me physically sick. Victor had threatened to hurt her little brother if she told anyone. She'd written it in code, thinking it was safer that way. But looking at it now, the meaning was clear. Years of silence, enforced by threats aimed at the people she loved most. Then, Mom chose to believe me. It happened slowly, tiny signs of doubt building, then all at once. She had been noticing the cracks, the inconsistent stories, Lila's transformation, her own lingering discomfort around Victor. When she finally said, "I'll back you, whatever you think is right," I nearly broke down. Just having one parent on my side felt like breathing again. She admitted she'd always felt something was off with Victor. The way he lingered around teenage cousins, how he was always eager to give rides, the jokes that weren't really jokes. But she'd suppressed those feelings for peace, for appearances, because Nina was family, because Victor was successful, because it was easier not to look too closely. One night, Lila suggested something desperate, planting something in Victor's car, getting him arrested, taking him off the board by any means necessary. I refused instantly. We had to win clean. If we used his tactics, he'd twist it and make us the villains. Lila nodded, but the look in her eyes said it all. She was a mother ready to do whatever it took to keep her child safe. The family dinner confrontation happened by accident. Victor had been drinking. He started ranting about ungrateful women who didn't recognize good men. Then he brought up Lila, said she'd seduced him, said she'd thrown herself at him. But he slipped, said something specific, something only someone who had been there that night at the quinceañera would know. The color drained from Nina's face. Lila's friend from college, who was studying law, helped her document everything. Not for court. The statute of limitations and lack of hard evidence ruled that out. But for protection.
a thorough paper trail, page after page, dated, witnessed, notarized. A wall of truth to stand against future lies. Then Mom's brother pulled me aside at a family barbecue. He said he was worried Nina had been drinking more, taking pills to sleep. He asked if I knew what was going on. I said nothing, but I could tell he was starting to see the pieces. The timing of her drinking, the way she never wanted to be alone with Victor. More family members began to reach out quietly. They'd started remembering things they'd brushed off for years. Victor's inappropriate attention at pool parties, his presence always too close, the long stares, the little comments.
Comments that made people uneasy, but never quite enough to speak out. Always explained away, always excused. The pattern only revealed itself when you zoomed out and looked at the whole picture. Mom used her medical connections to find Lila a trauma counselor willing to take her pro bono. Dr. Catherine specialized in the kind of cases that fell through the cracks, where the system failed but healing was still possible. Lila started sessions right away. For the first time, she had language for the pain she'd carried alone for years. Then came the confrontation in the parking garage, caught on a security camera, grainy but clear enough. Lila had approached Victor, trying to reason with him, tried to get him to stop the threats. He grabbed her arm, tight enough to leave bruises, snarling about taking her son. The footage captured it. His rage, her fear. Another piece of evidence for the file she was building. Quietly, carefully. Aunt Sylvia pulled me aside at a family get-together and apologized. Privately, quietly. She admitted she'd been jealous of Lila's potential. Harvard-bound, class valedictorian, everything her own kids struggled to achieve. She'd let that jealousy harden into cruelty. Said the wrong things when Lila needed compassion. The apology came too late to undo the damage, but it came. Word spread, quietly, the way it always does. The Whisper Network activated. Other parents stopped letting their daughters near Victor at family events. Excuses were made, conflicting plans, late arrivals, early exits, but the intent was clear. The community had realized the system wouldn't help, so they protected their own. Nina's sister, a family court judge, formally recused herself from any cases involving Victor, period. She cited conflict of interest, but you could hear the unease in her voice. She knew more than she was saying. Another piece of Victor's shield fell away. The network that once protected him, legal, familial, social, was eroding. At family gatherings, I started building informal defense systems. Nothing overt, just small acts of prevention. Making sure no younger cousin was ever alone with him, interrupting if I saw him inching too close, positioning myself nearby, always watching. Other women followed my lead. No discussions, no coordination, just a shared understanding. We couldn't erase him, but we could block his access. Mom joined forces with Stephanie's mom and Miss Kim to build a support web around Lila. They rotated responsibilities, checking in, dropping off groceries, babysitting. A quiet, powerful coalition of women who understood that sometimes justice wasn't found in court, but in collective care. Lila was never alone anymore. Victor's intimidation tactics collapsed in the face of that solidarity. He'd send threatening texts only to learn she wasn't isolated. He'd show up at her new apartment only to find her surrounded by friends and classmates. Study groups that stayed long past dinner. Neighbors who kept watch. Every failed attempt chipped away at his control. At Grandma's birthday party, Victor cornered our youngest cousin, casually offering her a ride home. Lila stepped in, smiling smoothly, saying she was headed that way anyway. The look that passed between her and Victor, his barely masked fury, her calm refusal, told Grandma everything. I saw it land in her eyes, the realization, followed by a sorrow so deep she reached for her oxygen tank. Family members began forgetting to invite Victor to things. Not a formal exclusion, that would require confrontation, but he somehow never got the updated group text, never knew when plans shifted. Nina started showing up alone, always with some excuse about work. The family was removing him, piece by piece,
No declarations, just silence. Dr. Catherine began providing written documentation from Lila's sessions. Dated notes, descriptions of trauma consistent with rape. The timeline lined up precisely with her pregnancy. It was clinical evidence, proof to supplement everything Lila had endured, not for a courtroom, but for the long fight of survival. Nina's sister, the judge, made her position even clearer, recusing herself from any case involving relatives, period. Another gate closed to Victor, another layer of influence stripped away. Then came the Korean barbecue dinner. Our teenage cousin, bright, quiet, always polite, firmly declined Victor's offer to drive her home, said her mom was already on the way. Victor's mask slipped entirely. For a flash, his face twisted with rage. He caught himself, but we'd all seen it. The image he'd spent years cultivating, kind, generous, trustworthy, cracked in public view.
Lila's focus shifted toward one thing: protecting her son's future. She knew one day he would ask about his father. The truth would be devastating, but lying would be worse. With Dr. Catherine's help, she began working through how to one day explain it. Gradually, in ways a child could understand. She wanted to raise him to know about consent, respect, boundaries, all the things our family had failed to teach. Meanwhile, rumors at school started to swirl about my family situation. I handled them calmly. I didn't share details, but I didn't deny the truth either. I was helping a family member through a difficult time. That was all anyone needed to know. My quiet consistency surprised people. Classmates who had expected drama instead found maturity. Some even started treating me with the new kind of respect. Back in the extended family group chat, silence fell. After Mom posted one simple question: why would Lila lie about something that cost her everything? No one had an answer, not one that made sense. The silence said more than any excuse ever could. Doubt had started creeping in, even for those most committed to keeping the peace. The truth, like water, found every crack. Family members started connecting dots they'd ignored for years. Victor's control over Nina, her increasing absences from family functions, Lila's drastic shift in personality after Elena's party. The pattern was undeniable once people stopped looking away. Small victories started adding up. Lila received an invitation to the Korean New Year celebration, her first real welcome at a family event in years. The tension in the air was heavy, but the invitation itself mattered. It meant people were beginning to accept that excluding her had been wrong, even if they still couldn't say the word why. Victor tried a new tactic. He filed a false CPS report, claiming Lila was mentally unstable and dangerous to her child. He used the last of his old contacts to try and flag her as unfit. But Lila had been preparing. She had therapy notes, character references, proof of stable housing, employment, and daily routines. The investigation came and went. They found nothing concerning. Lila's mother, who had carried guilt for years, finally reached her breaking point. When Victor contacted her directly, threatening, manipulating, she exploded. She told him never to call again, said if he set foot near her home, she'd call the police. The mother bear had awakened, and she wasn't backing down. Meanwhile, Victor's employer quietly moved him to a different department. There were no official complaints, no HR record, just a shift. Enough women had reported feeling uncomfortable. Enough whispers had reached the right ears. He was no longer allowed near junior staff. The Whisper Network had reached his workplace. Lila's support system had become something beautiful. She was invited to baby showers, included in family portraits, asked for parenting advice. The same cousins who'd once mocked her now looked to her for guidance. Not everyone had changed. Some relatives remained cold. But enough had shifted to show that healing, real healing, was possible. Then 3 women reached out privately, wives of Nina's detective colleagues.
They told Lila they had been watching Victor for years, carefully keeping their daughters away at every department function. They'd seen the signs, recognized the behavior, but without hard proof, without a victim willing to speak, all they could do was protect their own. I compiled everything, painstakingly, into a complete timeline. Every photo, every message, every memory. The pattern of grooming and abuse was undeniable when laid out chronologically. I shared it with the immediate family first. Watched their faces as the full scale of Victor's actions came into focus. Years of predation, all hidden in plain sight. Then Nina found the folder by accident while looking for tax documents. Inside were photos Victor had taken of Lila at family events when she was 13, 14, 15. Zoomed in, framed with disturbing attention. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. Her husband's obsession, his sickness, on full display. That's when she knew. Everything Lila had said was true. That discovery changed everything. She confronted Victor that night, in their home. Her detective training finally turned inward, toward the truth she'd been avoiding for years. Stephanie's mom, who lived next door, told me what happened. Victor stormed out with 2 suitcases around 2 a.m. Nina changed the locks immediately. 3 days later, the family meeting took place at Grandma's house. Victor wasn't invited. Lila sat between me and Mom, steady and strong, facing the very people who had once cast her out. Nina stood up first. She admitted that she'd known something was wrong, but she'd chosen denial.
Nina's voice cracked as she described discovering the photos, realizing her husband had been stalking teenage girls at family gatherings while she drank herself into oblivion. Uncle Rick tried to shift the conversation. He suggested they handle things privately to avoid scandal. Lila responded by calmly laying out her evidence, every threat, every text, every photograph. She spread them across Grandma's dining table, the same table where months earlier the family had voted to ban her. Silence fell, as relatives read through years of documentation, years of grooming, coercion, and threats. Aunt Sylvia broke down completely. She remembered mocking Lila for getting pregnant, never questioning the timing, never wondering if there was more to the story. She tried to apologize. Lila nodded but didn't dwell. This wasn't about forgiveness yet. It was about protection. The younger cousins had already been sent outside. The adults stayed behind to decide what came next. Some relatives still tried to downplay things, suggested Victor just needed therapy. Mom shut that down immediately. He threatened to burn down Lila's mother's house, she reminded them. This isn't a troubled man, he's a predator who's been allowed to operate unchecked. Then Nina stood. She revealed she'd already filed for divorce and was cooperating with an internal affairs investigation at her department. 3 other families had reported Victor's behavior at police events. Her career was likely over, but she finally looked free. No longer protecting him. I kept watching Lila throughout the meeting. She kept checking her phone. Her son was with her mother, surrounded by women from the Korean church who'd formed a quiet circle of defense around him. Even while explaining her trauma to people who should have shielded her years ago, she was still thinking of his safety first. The family split, in the way we expected. Grandma, Mom, Nina, Stephanie's family, and a handful of cousins fully supported Lila. Others hesitated. They admitted Victor was troubled, but weren't ready for full accountability. Uncle Rick and his side of the family left early, muttering about overreactions. The line was drawn. Those who believed victims and those who clung to comfortable lies. Victor tried one last move. He showed up at Lila's son's daycare, claiming to be a family friend sent to pick him up. The director, already on alert from earlier reports, called the police. The staff stalled him with paperwork while they waited. He left before officers arrived, but the incident was documented. That was the breaking point. Even the fence sitters saw it for what it was. Threatening Lila was bad enough. trying to take her child was unforgivable. Those relatives finally chose their side. Victor had pushed too far. Lila filed for a restraining order backed by years of records and the daycare report. The judge granted it immediately. It was just a piece of paper, but it meant something. A legal acknowledgement that Victor was dangerous, that Lila's fear was valid. The Whisper Network grew beyond our family. Victor's photos circulated discreetly through parent groups, school volunteers, and youth sports organizers. Nothing public that could invite lawsuits, but quietly, parent to parent, protecting children. He began encountering closed doors in places he never expected. Nina moved in with her brother temporarily. She started therapy, intensive and overdue, finally facing the years she had spent enabling him. She wrote Lila a letter, admitted her failure, promised to testify if needed, offered to help with therapy and legal fees. Lila didn't respond right away, but she kept the letter. I started my senior year with everything different. Some of my friends' parents still wouldn't let me talk to me, still poisoned by Nina's earlier calls. But others reached out, having learned the truth through quieter networks. Ms. Kim, my chemistry teacher, became something more than an educator. She became a mentor. She helped me work through the grief of discovering what my family had buried. Lila's custody situation stabilized. With Victor's threats neutralized and the support system documented, CPS closed their file. The daycare director submitted a glowing letter about Lila's parenting. Dr. Catherine provided professional evaluations of her emotional strength and stability. The system, once weaponized against her, was beginning to back off. Meanwhile, Victor's work situation unraveled. The quiet transfer hadn't calmed the growing concern. More women stepped forward with their own stories. Nothing that could get him fired, he had been too careful for that, but enough to make his job unsustainable.